Mockery among the stars. The galactic assembly glittered above the crimson clouds of Vorgoth Prime, a floating ring the size of a small moon, home to hundreds of alien embassies. Ships of every color and design drifted through the docking lanes, their hulls carved with sigils of ancient empires. Amid them all, a single gray vessel looked embarrassingly plain, the human transport Odyssey. Captain Mara Ellin stood at the viewport as the vessel locked into the assembly's lower bay. She had never seen so many species gathered in one place, nor so many eyes watching her as though she were an insect that had wandered into a temple. Humans had been admitted to the assembly only 3 years ago. In that short time, they had earned a reputation for stubborn optimism and naive courage. Today would test whether they deserved to stay at all. Mara adjusted the silver badge on her chest, a stylized spear encircled by a blue halo. The emblem of Earth's Defense Union. Below her breath, she whispered, "Let's hope they don't laugh too loud." The council chamber was a cathedral of light and gravity. Floating platforms held the delegates of every race, each surrounded by their respective atmospheres. The Vorgothi Emperor, massive and scaled like obsidian armor, occupied the central dais. His race had conquered hundreds of worlds and now demanded dominion over humanity's colonies in the Perseus Arm, for their protection, they claimed. When Mara's turn came, her image shimmered into the center field. She stood tall in her dark blue uniform, voice calm but firm. The Earth Union rejects the Vorgothi claim. Humanity is sovereign and independent under Article 12 of the Galactic Charter. A chorus of alien murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Vorgothi Emperor's eyes burned amber. "Your kind are infants in the stars, Captain. You toy with machines you barely understand. You have no fleets, no worlds of note. What defense could you possibly offer against a real power?" Mara gestured to the hollow display beside her. A small, sleek ship appeared, rotating slowly in the air. "This is our defense," she said. "Designation: Titan Spear. Human-built. Powered by a new energy core we call resonant fusion. It is capable of—" The chamber erupted in laughter. Not polite chuckles, genuine, rumbling amusement that echoed through the tiers. The Sarn, whose crystalline bodies caught the light like prisms, cackled in rhythmic chimes. The Droth, slug-like beings with mechanical limbs, clapped their appendages together in mock applause. Even the neutral species smiled. "A spear," the Emperor rumbled. "You would name your ship a primitive weapon? How quaint." Mara didn't flinch. "We name our weapons after things that end wars." The laughter faltered for a heartbeat. Only a heartbeat. The Emperor's second mouth twisted into something like a grin. "Your arrogance amuses me, human. When our armada arrives at your colonies, perhaps your spear can save you. We will see if your kind bleeds courage as easily as it bleeds hope." Mara met his gaze. "You mistake caution for fear, Emperor. We don't seek war, but we don't run from it either." The Assembly Chancellor, a neutral being of pure light, intervened. "Enough. The matter is decided. The claim of the Vorgothi Dominion is upheld. Human sovereignty remains disputed pending demonstration of sufficient defensive capability." Mara bowed stiffly. "Understood." The transmission ended. The laughter lingered in her mind long after the holograms faded. She returned to the docking bay where her first officer, Commander Holt, waited beside the shuttle. His face was tight with anger. "They didn't take us seriously, did they?" "No," Mara said quietly. "They never do." Holt folded his arms. "So what now? We can't fight an empire with 12 ships." She looked out the viewport toward the void, where, far from the Assembly's pomp, a single vessel waited in silent orbit around Mars. Sleek, gunmetal gray, its hull pulsed with a faint blue light from the experimental core buried deep inside. "What now?" she repeated. A small, almost dangerous smile curved her lips. "Now, we show them what a human ship can really do." The shuttle's engines roared to life, lifting from the bay toward the darkness between stars. Behind them, the laughter of the assembly faded into memory, a sound humanity would soon teach the galaxy to regret. The Titan's Spear. The Titan's Spear floated in silent orbit above Mars, a sliver of metal against the crimson dust below. To most eyes, it looked unimpressive, a vessel barely 300 meters long, dwarfed by the vast carriers of the older galactic races. But appearances had always deceived those who underestimated humanity. Beneath its dull hull, a new heart pulsed, the resonant core, a fusion engine that bent both gravity and energy in ways no alien scientist could yet comprehend. Captain Mara Ellin stepped onto the bridge. The air hummed faintly, a deep thrumming vibration that seemed to echo in her bones. Around her, the crew moved with quiet purpose. They weren't soldiers born into glory like the Vorgothi. They were scientists, engineers, and explorers who had learned to fight only because they had to. "Status?" she asked. Commander Holt, standing at the tactical console, replied without looking up. "Fleet reports ready. 11 ships in defensive formation near New Horizon. The Vorgothi Armada's 2 days out, traveling at warp factor 6. Their lead vessels' mass readings are obscene." Mara allowed herself a small, humorless smile. "They always overcompensate." The crew chuckled softly. It broke the tension for a moment. From the observation deck, New Horizon glowed in the distance, a small human colony world wrapped in green oceans and silver clouds. Tens of thousands of civilians had already been evacuated to bunkers. The rest watched the sky, waiting to see if the stories of alien cruelty were true. Holt's console beeped. "Transmission from the assembly relay. Vorgothi High Command has issued their final warning. Surrender the colony or face eradication." "Send this reply," Mara said evenly. "The humans of New Horizon do not yield. We stand ready to defend our world." She turned to her chief engineer, Dr. Vance, who was monitoring the power flows to the resonant core. "How stable is the drive?" Vance rubbed his temples. "As stable as a bomb sitting on a prayer. The harmonic frequencies still drift under stress. We've never fired the core at full resonance." "Then we'll learn fast." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Every officer understood what that meant. The Titan spear was untested. The weapon could either save them or tear them apart. 2 days later, the stars warped into streaks of blue as the Vorgothi Armada arrived. Hundreds of warships emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic predators, each one bristling with plasma cannons the size of skyscrapers. At their center hovered the Vorgothi dreadnought Krolseth, its hull plated in black gold armor, its engines glowing like suns. "Enemy fleet detected," Holt announced. 400 vessels. They're broadcasting on open channels." "Put it through," Mara said. The Emperor's voice filled the bridge, deep, mocking, and filled with relish. "Human Captain. The Assembly watches. I offer you mercy. Surrender your vessel and your colony. I will make your extinction swift." Mara leaned forward slightly. "Permission to speak freely, Your Majesty?" A pause. "Granted." She smiled thinly. "Go to hell." The communication cut off. A second later, the void erupted in light. The first barrage hit like a tidal wave. Blue plasma flares rippled across the Titan spear's shields. Human escorts darted between the capital ships, firing railgun rounds that sparked harmlessly against alien armor. The sky became a storm of color, plasma trails, missile contrails, exploding hulls. "Shields at 80%. Holt shouted. "We can't hold this line for long." "Hold it," Mara ordered. "All power to the core. Prepare resonance sequence." Dr. Vance's hands flew across the console. The deck vibrated violently as the ship's spine began to hum with power. "Core at 70% charge, 80, 90. Mara stood in the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the tactical display. "Target the enemy flagship's coordinates." The Titan's spear glowed. Its bow lit up with concentric rings of white-blue energy, each brighter than the last. The hum became a roar that pressed against the crew's chests. Static crawled across their skin. The Vorgothi Armada hesitated, for the first time. Sensors screamed warnings they couldn't comprehend. "Core fully charged," Vance said, voice trembling. "Resonant beam ready." "Fire," Mara whispered. A column of light erupted from the Titan spear, pure and focused, cutting across the darkness like a blade of godlight. It didn't explode. It didn't flare. It simply erased. The Vorgothi flagship vanished in a flash that blinded every sensor for 10 seconds. When the light faded, a hole the size of a continent burned in the planet's shadow. Silence filled the comms. Even the aliens stopped firing. Mara exhaled slowly. Status. Holt swallowed. Flagship destroyed. The rest of the fleet. They're retreating. No one cheered. No one spoke. They all stared at the empty space where an empire's pride had just ceased to exist. Mara turned toward the viewport, her reflection ghostly against the stars. "Send a message to the assembly," she said quietly. "Tell them the human spear has struck." The day the stars went silent. The wreckage of the Vorgothi armada drifted in silence. Once a swarm of invincible warships, now it was a graveyard of molten steel and drifting ash. The Titan's spear hung at the edge of the battlefield, its hull scorched, its crew exhausted. They had won, but victory was not enough. The enemy's homeworld still loomed untouched, pulsing with the arrogance of an empire that thought itself immortal. Captain Mara Ellin stood at the bridge viewport, arms folded, her reflection hard and hollow. "Report." Commander Holt's voice was steady but grim. "Residual radiation dispersing. No hostile signatures in local space. But we're picking up transmissions from Vorgoth Prime. They're rallying another fleet. 50 ships, maybe more." "Of course they are," Mara said. "They've never lost before. They don't know how." In the holodisplay, Vorgoth Prime filled the screen, a vast world of crimson deserts and silver oceans. Around it orbited the Assembly's relay satellites, broadcasting the battle live across the galaxy. Every sentient species was watching. Billions of eyes waited to see if the upstart humans could truly defy an empire. Dr. Vance, hunched over the engineering console, broke the silence. "Captain, the core's still stable, but we burned through half the containment circuits during the last shot. Another full-power discharge might... well, it might take us with it." "How bad?" she asked. He looked up. "Planetary strike bad." Mara's jaw tightened. "Then it's a good thing I only need to fire once." The bridge fell silent. No one questioned her. They all knew what was coming, and what it would mean. Hours later, the Titan spear dropped out of warp on the dark side of Vorgoth Prime. The planet filled the view like a red giant, its clouds thick and turbulent. Lightning flickered across the atmosphere, illuminating the armored orbital stations ringing its equator. The Vorgothi fleets gathered like hornets around a nest. Mara stood at the center of the bridge. "Helm, bring us to within range of the planetary axis. Target their capital coordinates." Holt hesitated. "Captain, the core won't survive this." "Neither will we, if they do." Her voice softened. "I won't let humanity live in anyone's shadow." The Titan's spear powered up. The hum of the resonant core grew deeper, louder, a vibration that made the deck plates tremble. Blue light bled through the seams of the hull, rippling outward in waves. The stars themselves seemed to dim in comparison. On Vorgoth Prime, alarms wailed across continents. Every planetary sensor locked onto the tiny human vessel. Messages flooded the comms, orders, threats, pleas, but Mara ignored them all. "Dr. Vance," she said quietly, "synchronize the core. Full resonance. Let's end this." Vance's hands shook as he entered the final sequence. Resonance lock in 5, 4, 3. "Captain," Holt said, voice barely above a whisper. "If this works..." "It will," she said. The hum became a roar. The view outside blurred into blinding white light. Energy spiraled from the ship's bow in concentric rings, each one brighter, denser, tighter. The resonant beam erupted, a pillar of pure energy that cut through the void and struck the planet dead center. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Vorgoth Prime screamed. The planet's crust buckled as if struck by a god's hammer. Mountains cracked, oceans boiled. The core beam tunneled deep into the mantle, destabilizing the magnetic field that held the world together. Within seconds, a rift opened across its equator, a glowing wound spilling magma and light into space. The beam ceased, and silence followed. Then the world began to split. The crack widened, ripping continents apart. The atmosphere vented in a massive plume of vapor and fire. The planet folded inward, then outward, two hemispheres tearing away from each other, molten rivers glowing between them. The shock wave reached orbit, scattering debris for thousands of kilometers. The bridge shook violently. Lights flickered, alarms blared. Vance shouted over the roar. "Core's overloading. We have to shut it down." "Do it," Mara commanded. The resonant core dimmed, then went silent. The ship drifted, battered but alive. Outside, where a world had once been, there was now only ruin, two glowing halves slowly drifting apart, their molten edges cooling in the vacuum. For a long time, no one spoke. The crew stared in mute awe. Even Holt, usually the first to speak, said nothing. On every channel, the same image broadcast across the galaxy, a human ship floating above a shattered world. Mara finally broke the silence. "Status." Vance swallowed. "We're alive. Somehow." She nodded slowly. "Then let's make sure they know why." She turned toward the comms officer. "Transmit to the Galactic Assembly. The Vorgothi Dominion is no longer a threat. Humanity defends itself." Across the stars, empires that had once mocked Earth fell silent. Entire species paused to watch the replay, the moment a so-called primitive species had cracked a world in half with a single strike. For the first time in galactic history, no one laughed. From laughter to legend. The ruins of Vorgoth Prime drifted in silent orbit, two molten halves circling each other like broken moons. Where an empire once ruled, now there was only light and dust. The shock wave of its destruction rippled through hyperspace, echoing across star systems. For days afterward, every sensor in the galaxy recorded the same thing, a single point of impossible energy, fired from a ship no one had believed could exist. The Titan's spear limped through the wreckage, its hull scorched, its power core dim. Inside, the crew moved quietly, as if afraid to disturb the silence that had followed their victory. They had survived. Humanity had survived. But the weight of what they had done pressed heavier than any battle scar. Captain Mara Ellin stood on the bridge, watching fragments of the Vorgothi world drift past the viewport. Her reflection looked older, haunted. "Status?" she asked softly. Commander Holt looked up from his console. "Navigation stable. Damage control teams report we can make warp speed again in 12 hours. Casualties minimal." Dr. Vance added, "Core's cooling. It'll take weeks before it's safe to start up again." "Frankly, Captain, we're lucky to be alive." Mara nodded. "Luck had nothing to do with it. We built something that worked." Vance didn't answer. None of them did. They all felt it, the mix of awe and dread. Humanity had just committed the single greatest act of destruction in galactic history. The communications officer turned in her chair. "Captain, incoming message from the Galactic Assembly. Priority 1. Mara's jaw set. "Put it through." The image flickered onto the main display, the Assembly Chancellor, his form shimmering with golden light. Around him, the representatives of hundreds of species filled the background, silent, tense, waiting. "Captain Ellin," the Chancellor began. His voice was measured, cautious. "The Assembly has witnessed the event at Vorgoth Prime. The magnitude of your weapon has shaken every power in known space." Mara held his gaze. "We defended our people, Chancellor. That's all we ever wanted." "Defended?" one of the alien delegates interrupted, a crystalline Sarn, voice sharp and metallic. "You annihilated an entire world." Mara didn't flinch. "They declared war on us. They targeted our colonies, enslaved our settlers, slaughtered civilians. We ended that war, permanently." The chamber filled with uneasy murmurs. Even through the transmission, Mara could sense their fear. Not of the destruction itself, but of humanity. The unpredictable newcomers who had built a weapon that could unmake a planet. The Chancellor raised a hand, quieting the Assembly. "Humanity has proven its strength beyond question. The Assembly hereby recognizes Earth and its colonies as a fully sovereign power. No nation shall contest your borders or military capabilities." Holt exhaled in disbelief. "They're giving us full recognition?" Mara didn't smile. "They're not recognizing us, Commander. They're warning each other." The Chancellor's voice softened. "Captain Ellin, the galaxy now sees your kind as formidable. We ask only that such power be used with restraint." "Restraint?" Mara echoed. She nodded once. "That's all we ever wanted too." The transmission ended. The bridge went quiet again. Later, in her quarters, Mara sat before the observation window. From here, she could still see the glowing fracture of Vorgoth Prime, splitting the starlight like a scar across the void. She thought of the billions who had lived there, soldiers, families, children. Even in victory, there was no peace in what she had done. Holt entered quietly. Message from Earth Command. The Titan spear is being recalled. They're calling it a deterrent weapon now. Mara gave a faint, weary smile. That's the polite word for monster. Humanity needed to survive, Holt said. And we did. She looked up at him. Do you think they'll ever forgive us for this? He hesitated. Maybe not. But they'll never underestimate us again. Mara turned back to the window. The twin halves of the shattered world drifted apart, their glow fading into darkness. Somewhere, she knew, other empires were already designing shields, weapons, and countermeasures, trying to prepare for the day humanity's spear would rise again. That was the way of the stars. Fear bred invention, invention bred war. But for now, there was silence. Peace, fragile and uncertain, born from terror. She whispered, barely loud enough to hear herself. We didn't build it to rule them. We built it so they'd never laugh again. Outside, the Titan spear turned slowly toward the distant blue shimmer of Earth. Its engines flared weakly to life, guiding it home. Across the galaxy, whispers spread through every world, every ship, every port. The humans cracked a planet in half. And from that day on, the laughter of the galaxy was replaced by a single truth. You can mock a species once, but never after they've drawn their spear.